Hi, I'm Gerry from Gerry's Craft Room, and in this video I'm going to make more boxes and cards with the Tonic Studios Craft Kit. I'm taking it a bit further with the boxes with windows and shakers, and I cut the box 2 times and cut windows out of 1 piece. I used a slightly smaller square because the dies from the set will give you very little space to add tape. I used a cutout piece to measure the acetate. I use a piece from a package. You can make the acetate slightly smaller than the panels on the box, because you need the room to bend the box, as I will show you in a bit. I add 3 mm tape along all the edges, and then I'm going to add the acetate pieces. I don't know if I mentioned it in the previous videos. You can easily pre-make a bunch of boxes and leave the bottom part. Don't assemble that just yet, so you can store them flat, and this way you only need to tape the bottom and the box is done. It's maybe easy to have some on hand. Here you can see why you need some space. This way you can still bend and tape the box. Now this is what it looks like so far. On top of the acetate pieces I added more tape. Make sure to stay away a bit from the edges so the tape doesn't show on the front. I use craft foam to make the raised part for the shaker, and you can also use foam tape or foam tape squares if you like. This needs to be very small because the box needs to be assembled, and you must be able to bend it like I showed you earlier. I use a white craft foam, but you can use the color of the paper if you like, or a darker color. This way it's less visible from the outside. Make sure the foam is touching each other so you have a closed piece. Depending on how small the shaker parts are that you use, it can be very important. Sequins I use are a bit forgiving, as they won't fall out of tiny gaps. And as you can see here, the box can still be assembled because there is some room to move it. I'm going to add some tape on top of the foam. You don't have to do this when you used foam tape. And by the way, I added the products I used in the description box for you, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. And then I sprinkle in some sequins. I cut another piece for the back, and this is with the die from the set, and I add that on top with a pretty side taped to the foam, and then you have the shaker box. And I do the same with the other 2 windows. Before you start adding the foam, you best tape the pieces together, as mine was a bit in the way when adding the little flap. So I taped the box together, and now the inside doesn't look pretty. So you can fix that with adding a piece of tissue or tissue paper to the inside, and then add the gift or candy or anything else small enough to fit inside. I used the little triangle pieces that came out of the die as a template to cut little pieces to use on the outside to decorate. And I cut some rectangles and mini dies to cut some shapes also to decorate. I have some jute again to close the box. I made a loop and measured the size. And then I'm going to make a knot in that spot. I always like it when you can easily open and close a box like this again. You may be great at tying a knot, but not everyone is, so once it's open it can look awful after closing again. And then I measure again to be sure. And I'm going to make some more knots on top of that at the side of the loose ends. You want to keep the length of the loop. And I want a nice bulky knot. With the last knot I add some glue and pull it tight, and I'm going to wipe away the excess glue. This will dry clear and then I cut off the ends, and then you have a fun closing for your box. And it goes great with the masculine theme of the paper. For the next box I cut the parts out twice and cut out the shapes with the mini dies, and I cut the same shapes again in white, and I'm going to glue them to the back of the box to make the shape stand out more. And I do this the same with all the parts. You can also do this the other way, with gluing the little parts on top. Then make sure to cut the parts out of the box a little offset, so the parts you add on top end up in the middle. I made another jute closing with the loop and a knot, but now with the ends sticking out, and I'm making some dangles. You need a slightly longer piece of jute for this. I glued a few hearts together to get some weight, and they will hang nicely this way. And I taped the cord to the back, and I'm going to add another one on top. And I measure on the box for the right size, because I like them on different heights. And this makes a nice fancy box. Now for the last box I cut the pieces without the top. Just tape the paper to the die to save paper. You can cut it off later also if you prefer that. I cut the little squares out of both parts and taped the box parts together. And I stamped the top pieces and colored them with a glitter marker. I have some acetate again and use another piece as a template to cut them to size. I added tape along the edges and then I add the acetate to the back. And then I assemble the box, and as you can see the Easter eggs fit right inside, like some of you mentioned already. Made another closing with the jute. The ladybug die isn't the same on both sides, so you may want to cut the front and back of the paper to make it fit. So here are the 3 boxes together. And then some easy cards with the leftover strips and bits. I stamped sentiments from the previous kit and I add the paper parts that I cut. I also add a strip with parts cut out with the dies and used white as a mat. And this makes a pretty fast card with the leftover bits combined with some bigger pieces. Some pre-made drops to finish the card. And then another card a bit in the same way, but I'm going to do some more layering. I edited out a few bits that were similar to the first card, as I don't want it to be boring for you. And I add little die cuts to finish the card. And now for the last card, I taped the two layers together and I have some matted die cuts. I stamped and colored the ladybugs with a red Nuvo Aqua Flow pen. And I colored the little stamped heart in the same way. And I add some Jewel Drops Strawberry Coulis to make it even brighter. I also added it on the ladybug wings and it gives a real pretty effect. I hope you liked the video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and make sure to keep on crafting.